Have you ever woken up and wondered where your time went? Not just the hour or the day, but the years. You think back and realize just how many moments you gave away. Not because you wanted to, but because you felt like you had to. For family, for work, for expectations. And somewhere along the way, pieces of who you are got lost in all that giving. Now don't get me wrong, giving is beautiful. Loving others, supporting them, being dependable, it's part of what makes life meaningful. But here's the question. What happens when that generosity starts to cost you your peace, your joy, and even your identity? You reach this stage of life hoping for a little more calm, a little more space to breathe, to enjoy, to just be. But the world doesn't always make that easy. People still expect things from you. The roles you've played, parent, partner, caregiver, peacekeeper, they don't just disappear. And if you're not careful, your needs, your desires, your voice can slowly fade into the background. That's why today, I want to have an honest conversation with you. Not just about living longer, but about living well. About recognizing the things you should never have to give up, not for anyone. Not even for the people you love most. Because when you protect what matters within yourself, you don't become selfish. You become whole. Let's start with something most of us can relate to right away: your time. Time is this strange thing. When you're young, it feels endless. But the older we get, the more we realize how precious it truly is. And yet, we give it away so easily. To obligations that don't bring us joy. To conversations that drain our energy. To favors we say yes to, even when every part of us wants to say no. Have you ever sat through a dinner, a meeting, or a phone call where your mind kept whispering, "I don't want to be here," but you stayed anyway? Maybe it felt rude to leave. Maybe you were worried what they'd think. Maybe you've just gotten so used to putting others first that it didn't even occur to you that you have a choice. But here's something wise people have long understood. The way you spend your time is the way you spend your life. It's been said that the most powerful person is the one who has control over their own time. It's not about being rich or famous. It's about being free. And that freedom starts when you stop filling your days with empty commitments. You don't have to say yes to every invitation. You don't have to explain yourself when you choose a quiet afternoon over a noisy gathering. Choosing how you spend your hours is not rejection. It's respect. For your energy. For your well-being. For your right to decide what matters most now. Think about this. How many books are waiting on your nightstand? How many hobbies have you pushed aside? How many walks have you skipped just to please someone else? Every yes to something meaningless is a no to something meaningful. And no one, no matter how close, has the right to steal your time unless you freely give it. Now I know it's not always easy. Sometimes it's a son or daughter asking for help. Sometimes it's a friend who means well but doesn't respect your boundaries. Saying no can feel uncomfortable, even unkind. But the truth is, the kindest thing you can do, for yourself and for them, is to be honest about what you can give. And more importantly, what you choose to give. Which brings us to something even deeper: your emotional independence. For many of us, especially those of us who've spent decades caring for others, emotions can start to feel like they belong to everyone but ourselves. You worry when your children are upset. You carry the weight of your partner's moods. You're the one friends call when they need to vent. And somehow, their stress becomes yours. It's noble, yes. But it's also exhausting. Because over time, you stop asking yourself, "How do I feel?" And instead, your happiness becomes tied to how everyone else is doing. I want to tell you about someone I met years ago. Her name was Linda. At 73, she had this calm energy about her, but there was also a heaviness in her voice. She told me that for most of her life, she was the one everyone leaned on. Her kids, her friends, even neighbors. And she never complained. She loved them, she said. But one day, she realized something. She had no space left for herself. Her emotions were like leaves in the wind, constantly tossed around by the storms of others. So, she did something small, but powerful. She went on a weekend retreat. Alone. Didn't tell anyone. Just took that time for herself. And of course, when she got back, her daughter was upset. "Why weren't you there when I needed you?" Linda just smiled and said, "Sweetheart, I love you. But I also need to love myself. And this weekend was for me." That moment changed everything. It wasn't easy, there was guilt, resistance, even tears. But eventually, people adjusted. They learned that Linda wasn't abandoning them. She was finally showing up for herself. That's what emotional independence looks like. It's not about shutting people out or pretending you don't care. It's about recognizing that you are not responsible for everyone's happiness. You're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to feel what you feel. And you're allowed to protect your peace. It's been wisely said. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. You can't control how people behave, but you can control whether their behavior controls you. Imagine what it would feel like to stop carrying every complaint, every drama, every unmet expectation. To be there for others, yes, but not at the cost of losing yourself. That is the kind of strength that doesn't fade with age. It grows. And as we talk about strength, let's talk about one of its quietest but most important forms: protecting your peace in family conflicts. Family, as wonderful as it is, can sometimes be the biggest source of stress. A single comment at dinner. A disagreement over how to raise the grandkids. The same old argument playing on repeat for years. It can feel like walking a tightrope, can't it? But here's the truth. Not every argument is worth having. Not every opinion needs a response. And not every conflict is yours to fix. When things get tense, I want you to remember something simple. Pause. Just take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I trying to protect? My pride or my peace? You don't have to win the conversation. You don't have to prove your point. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when to let go, not out of weakness, but out of clarity. You get to choose what you carry and what you lay down. And peace, my friend, is worth laying down almost anything. As we keep going, just remember this: protecting your time, your emotions, and your peace isn't about shutting the world out. It's about finally letting yourself in. Because your life, even now, especially now, is still yours to live fully. Sometimes it's not just our peace we give away, it's our power to choose. And all too often that loss begins with one quiet, heavy emotion: guilt. Guilt is tricky. It dresses itself up as love, as duty, as being a good person. It whispers in your ear when you finally take a day for yourself. Shouldn't you be doing something more useful? It nudges you when you say no to a favor. Are you letting them down? And if you've lived a life of putting others first, guilt can feel so familiar that it becomes automatic. But let's pause and ask something honest. Does guilt actually help you live a better life? Or does it just hold you back from living the life that's already yours? Guilt can be a misplaced sense of responsibility, an emotion that's only useful if it teaches you something. But beyond that, it becomes a chain. As someone once said, "He who is a slave to his guilt will never be free." And I think that hits close to home. How many things have you done over the years not because you wanted to, but because you felt you should? The visit you weren't up for. The agreement you gave without enthusiasm. The yes that really should have been a no. And what was the cost? Your energy. Your peace of mind. That quiet voice inside you that said, "I need something too. Here's something to try." The next time you feel guilt creeping in, stop and write down two things. First, what do you really want to do? Second, what do you think others expect of you? Then ask yourself, what happens if I choose what I want instead of what they expect? You might be surprised. Most of the time, the world doesn't fall apart. People adjust. life moves on. And what you gain, a sense of freedom, a clearer connection to yourself, is far more valuable than the fleeting approval of doing what you're supposed to. Living from guilt is like walking around with stones in your pockets. It slows you down. It keeps your eyes on the ground. You deserve to feel light again. You deserve to make choices from a place of joy, not fear. And speaking of joy, let's talk about something we all have, but sometimes leave behind as life gets busier, heavier, and more complicated. Our dreams and passions. You know the ones. The things that used to make your eyes light up. Maybe it was painting, or gardening, or learning something new. Maybe you wanted to travel, to write, to sing. Or maybe it was something small, like dancing in the kitchen or growing tomatoes in your yard. Somewhere along the way, those things got labeled silly or not practical. You told yourself it was too late, or that there wasn't enough time, or that other things were more important. But let me tell you a story. There was a woman named Anna Mary Robertson. You might know her better as Grandma Moses. She didn't start painting until she was 77 years old. That's right, 77. Her hands were too stiff for embroidery, so she picked up a paintbrush instead. No training, no big plan, just a desire to create something that brought her joy. And wouldn't you know it? Her paintings, full of life and color, ended up in galleries and museums. She became a symbol of possibility. That age doesn't stop passion. Only our beliefs do. Now, you might be thinking, well, I'm no artist. But that's not the point. The point is, you're alive. And as long as you're breathing, there is still something inside you that wants to be expressed. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't even need to be shared. It just needs a little space in your life. Maybe you've always wanted to learn to play the piano. Maybe you've been thinking about writing down your memories for your grandchildren. Or maybe you just want to try something new for the first time in decades. Something that makes your heart skip, just a little. It's not selfish. It's not silly. It's vital. Because passion is the fuel that keeps your spirit awake. A meaningful life isn't one filled with recognition or grand achievements. It's one lived with intention. When you choose to engage in what you love, you remind yourself that your time still has value, not just for others, but for you. And yet, there's something else that often gets lost over time, not as easily seen, but deeply felt: your self-esteem. Think about this. When you were born, it's like you were handed a mirror, a clear, honest reflection of who you are. But over the years, that mirror passed through a lot of hands. Parents, teachers, friends, the world. And every time someone judged you, criticized you, or told you who you should be, they left a smudge, a crack, a little distortion on that mirror. Now, you might look at yourself and see not you, but all those marks left behind. The things you were told you couldn't do. The comparisons. The quiet dismissals. And maybe over time, you started to believe them. But here's the beautiful truth. That mirror can be cleaned. Every time you speak to yourself with kindness, you polish it. Every time you choose your truth over someone else's opinion, you repair it. Every time you look at yourself and say, I am enough, just as I am, you bring that reflection back into focus. Self-esteem isn't arrogance. It's not loud or boastful. It's the quiet strength of knowing your worth, even when the world forgets. And the older you get, the more important that strength becomes. Because at this stage in life, there is no one left to impress. You've done the work. You've faced the storms. You've built and loved and lost and risen again. So who exactly still gets to decide if you're enough? The answer is simple. You do. You are not a collection of past mistakes. You are not what someone else couldn't see in you. You are not too old, too late, or too far behind. You are still here. And that means your voice, your presence, your truth, they all still matter. So, let's make a quiet promise together, right now. No more hiding your light to make others more comfortable. No more apologizing for taking up space. No more believing the old lies that told you you had to earn your worth. You were born worthy. And nothing, no age, no opinion, no regret can take that from you. When you embrace that truth, something shifts. You start walking a little taller. You laugh a little louder. You stop asking for permission to be yourself. And that is the power of reclaiming what never should have been given away. There's something sacred about taking your self-worth back into your own hands. And once you start doing that, once you begin to see yourself clearly again, you realize just how much else is worth protecting. And one of the most important things, perhaps the most basic yet often overlooked, is your health. Your body, with its creaks and scars, its strength and softness, is the only place you will live for the rest of your life. And still, how many times have you put off that checkup, ignored that ache, or skipped that walk because someone else needed something, or because deep down you felt that your needs could wait? Here's a hard truth. Neglect doesn't earn you more love. It just leaves you more tired. We've been taught, especially in the older generations, that caring for yourself too much is selfish, that you're supposed to push through, be strong, be silent, put everyone else first. But how can you give your best to others when you're running on empty? Your physical well-being is a foundation, not a luxury. People long ago may not have had access to modern medicine or gym memberships, but they still understood this. A sound mind in a sound body. When your body feels better, your mind clears up. When you treat your health as a priority, you send a powerful message. I deserve to feel well. I deserve to be cared for, even if I'm the only one doing it. This isn't about chasing perfection. You don't need to run marathons or eat kale with every meal. But it does mean listening, really listening. When your back aches, when your sleep is off, when something doesn't feel right, your body is speaking to you. Respond with kindness. It could be as simple as adding 5 more minutes to your walk, drinking more water, stretching before bed, going to that appointment you've been putting off. These aren't grand gestures, but they are essential ones. Because health isn't about how many years you live. It's about how much life you can fit into the years you have. And here's the truth. The people who love you, truly love you, want you to be healthy and here. So taking care of yourself isn't turning away from them. It's turning toward a future where you can still laugh, move, play, and be present for the moments that matter. But of course, even with good health, even with strong boundaries, there's still one fear that creeps into many of our decisions. It's subtle, but powerful. The fear of what others will think. You know that feeling. You put on an outfit that makes you smile, then wonder if someone will say it's too young. You consider trying something new, but then hear that little voice. What if people talk? So you adjust. You shrink. You blend in. But let me ask you this. Who are these people you're afraid of disappointing? Are they paying your bills? Are they walking in your shoes? Are they going to be there, holding your hand, when you face your hardest days? Likely not. The weight of others' opinions is invisible, but it's heavy. And carrying it around every day will slowly wear down your joy. That's not what you were meant for. It's been said that freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating desire for approval. In other words, you don't find happiness by being liked. You find it by being true. So wear what you love. Laugh loudly. Try new things. Say what you mean. Give yourself permission to enjoy your life, even if no one else understands. And if you want a practical way to start, here's a simple challenge. Do one thing this week that brings you joy, just for you. No explaining, no justifying, no asking, is this okay? Whether it's eating your favorite dessert without guilt or dancing to music in your living room, let yourself feel alive again. Because joy isn't a reward, it's a right. And that brings us to the most important truth of all. Something I hope you'll carry with you long after this video ends. Your life matters. Still, it matters even if you don't work full-time anymore. It matters even if your kids have moved on, even if the world has gotten quieter around you. It matters because you're still here. I once heard the story of a woman named Ernestine Shepherd. At over 60, she felt lost. Her sister had passed. Her sense of direction faded. She believed her best years were behind her. But one morning she remembered a promise, to stay active, to keep moving, to make her life count. So she started walking, then lifting weights, then training. And at 74, she became one of the oldest competitive bodybuilders in the world. Not because she wanted fame, but because she refused to let life tell her she was finished. Now you don't need to be a bodybuilder. You don't need medals or big accomplishments. But you do need to know this. Meaning doesn't come from the past. It comes from what you choose to do today. Maybe that's finally planting the garden you've dreamed of, calling someone you miss, writing your story, volunteering, learning to cook something new, or simply watching the sunrise with your hands wrapped around a warm mug and your heart full of quiet, present gratitude. Fulfillment doesn't come from what you have, but from how you live. And the good news? You get to decide how to live. Every single day. You are not a shadow of who you were. You are not a list of roles you've played. You are not done. You are becoming still. And that becoming is beautiful. So if no one's told you lately, let me be the one. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to slow down, to speed up, to do less or more or something entirely new. You're allowed to protect what's sacred, to say no, to say yes, to dream, to rest, to grow. Because at the end of it all, life isn't measured by how much you gave up. It's measured by what you kept for yourself, your peace, your joy, your voice, your dreams. Thank you for spending this time with me. If any part of this message touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. You never know, your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you'd like more videos that speak to where you are in life and where you're going, feel free to subscribe. This is a space for reflection, growth, and living with intention, no matter your age. Because you are still writing your story. And the best pages? They might just be ahead. Take care of yourself. Be kind to your heart. And never forget, you are worthy of a life that feels good to live. Always.